So as men start to realize they're not alone on the island and that they're part of a greater collective and that, or droplets from the same ocean of consciousness, how do you think that's going to impact men's underlying sense of loneliness? Because again, that's something men tell me, it doesn't matter how successful, how many family members or sexual partners or whatever they have, they tell me that deep down they feel lonely.
Yeah, well, that's just part of our the way we are. We guys, like I say, we don't share much of what's personal inside of us. So yes, you can share certain things at a certain level. You can share intellectually very easily. That's just a discussion. You can share a little bit of the top level of your feelings. Okay, you get this far, but the stuff that's down there at the bottom, you don't share that. That's just yours to carry around. And yes, if you get a man to become aware of his feelings, he will probably tell you he feels lonely.
Yeah.
And I suspect that's true of any man. You find any man anywhere, any position, any level of education, and if you can get him to actually examine his feelings, he'll probably tell you that at the very deep parts, he's lonely. Yeah. Nobody ever touches there. He doesn't go there himself. Yeah. But he doesn't go there either. It's just that part of him that would like to connect, like to love, like to feel loved, like to be connected to. That part at the core is empty, has always been empty, and he just assumes it always will be empty. And that's just life. Yeah. That's what he has to deal with. And I think that's very, very common. Yes. Absolutely so. There's very few men have a relationship with a woman that gets to that deep of a level with them. Usually the relationship with a woman tends to be satisfying, her needs. She has a need to you to lift this heavy bag. He has a need to you to drive the car, up the steep mountain, has a need for you to do this, do that, take care of these things, maybe bring home money, maybe not, but, take care of this and take care of that. And it's all about the things you do. Yeah. It's never about what you are.
What you are.
And it's that point down there at the pit, at the bottom of the feelings, that is who you are. And that never gets touched. No. Who you are is never really comes up. It's always about what can you do? What can you say? You can take me out on a date, or you can do this, and you can, do these other things. You can, whatever. The relationship with females never gets to be that deep as who they are. That spot doesn't seem to hardly ever get touched. And they feel that, and they'd like somebody to go there. They'd like to be able to feel that somebody cares that much just about them, as opposed to what they can do, what they can offer, the services they can render. They would like to think that somebody cares just about them, but nobody really does care that much about them. It's more about the services they can render.
What they do, how they perform.
Yes.
What they perform it for. That makes a lot of sense. And I think, and I think that core need to be seen and to be heard and to be understood. Mm-hmm. And I often tell men, because like I said, several times a week, men tell me these things when we co-create that space where they feel safe to talk about it, is I tell them there is also some personal accountability involved. For instance, a client who told me, I just feel like nobody really understands who I really am. And I asked him how he interacts with people at work, how he interacts with his family. And he basically didn't, like you said, never told anybody anything, but he felt resentful that nobody really knew who he was. So that's where, like you said, men are going to want to start learning those skills to open up and communicate and be curious. And ladies, we need to be patient and kind with giving men the flexibility and freedom to explore that instead of expecting them to meet us where we're at that skill set. Because like you said, we've been practicing that for, thousands of years longer.
Yeah, that's in your DNA.
Yeah.
Women always had to work together because each woman had 4 or 5 or 6 or 10 children. And if a woman gets sick, she needs her friends to step in and take care of her kids. And she takes care of her friends' kids. And having a friendship with the other women was how you stayed alive and how your children stayed alive. And that was, the women work together, share, help each other. That's why they have an own group preference. Men were not like that. They were out doing things that were dangerous, and they couldn't afford to be too emotionally connected to anybody because that person is likely not to survive. So you can't let that bother you. You still have to go do your job. So you tend to not go into that feeling space. You put that feeling space someplace else. You don't get that close.
Yeah.
You don't share at that level. You're just somebody who does a job. That's you're on the outside of that. You're not on the inside. So when we get into marriages and relationships, the men still see themselves that way. They're there to do a job. They have to wash the car, change the oil, they take out the garbage. They have things that they do, and they do those things, and they perform their job, but they don't go to that deep spot. And often, I think it's convenient also for the wives and their women to not really go there either.
Yeah.
Oftentimes, for their women, they just would like the guy to do his job. Okay, you take out the dog. If you wash the dog, take out the garbage, do the things that you have to do, do them well. Treat me nice, take me out to dinner, bring me a rose on Mother's Day. And if you do all those things, then I'm happy. And dealing with him at a deep level of his feelings never even occurs to them. Because, guys don't really have feelings anyway. You just, it's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy. The guys who don't show their feelings get treated like they don't have feelings. So it's
right.
It's all, you have to actually purposefully, a woman would have to purposely step in and just, love that guy, I guess, to the point that it reaches that deep point in him and not just settle for his job, the things he's supposed to do, but he exists on the level to do. He's a doer.
Yeah.
And very seldom does any relationship with anybody get past that doing level. It's all about what you do with his guy friends, with his girlfriends, with his wife, with his daughters. It's all about what can he bring to the table, what it is that he can do. So the part of, well, what about the doer? What about me, the little guy who sits down here at the bottom of the pile, who would like to be touched, would like to be seen, would like to be connected with? Just do your job, and everything will work out okay. Yeah. So it's part of our culture, It's not only part of our instincts, but it's part of our culture.
Yeah.
We don't see men with that need.
Right.
That's a female need. Women need to be seen. They need to be touched. They need to be loved. They need to be cuddled. They have to know that they're special.
Yeah.
They want to feel special.
Yeah.
And if the guy brings them flowers or says the right things, then they feel special. But guys,
men need that too.
Yeah, they do. They need that too. That's why they're feeling empty. That's why they're feeling nothing down there. But it's not in our culture to treat men as though they're special in that way. They're only special in how well they do their jobs. Do they do the things they're supposed to do? They're not really seen as having that other part that also needs to feel special because they just exist, because they are. And that's not a part of our culture. So the females don't think about it, and the men really don't think about it. It's just the way things are.
Yeah. And men also, I think you're right about all of that. It makes a lot of sense with what I've experienced. And something else that men often tell me, even if I'm working with like CEOs, millionaires, really like high performing men, they'll tell me, sometimes I just want to be held and told everything's going to be okay. Like,
Mhm.
or I just want to be, you know, yeah, I guess I read once, I don't remember who to give credit to for it. It was not mine, but I really liked it. And I use it with men, and it seems they really resonate is to be adored, admired, appreciated, and accepted. And they're like, oh, well, I don't need to be adored or admired. Like, no, 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 no. I don't want to be selfish. I don't want to be, you know,
Yeah,
narcissistic or something. And I'm like, no, 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 no. I think if you're like, if we're constantly meeting each other's needs, like when my husband comes home and says, thank you for dinner. And I'm like, thank you for earning the money and doing that really hard job today to buy us this amazing organic food. You look gorgeous today. I love you. Like, I appreciate everything you're doing. Thank you for paying the mortgage last month so that I could sit and coach and help people and, just making people feel really admired and adored and appreciated and cherished and special. You're going to have a man who's like falling over backwards, pleasing you right back.
absolutely. Absolutely. But very few men get that.
Yeah.
That's not part of our culture to be that way
Hmm.
for men or for women. For women to be that way and really appreciate their men at that depth and that level, or for men to ever even realize that that they would like that. Yes,
Right.
it's just not a part of our culture. We see men in terms of the job that they can do, what they can do, not in terms of
They
you
are.
know, yeah, not in terms of who they are, emotional beings who need to be seen and touched and loved and appreciated.
Yeah.
That's not a man's role. That's a woman's role. Women
Right.
need all that stuff. Our culture will say, "Oh yes, women need all that. They need to feel appreciated. They need to feel special, and all of that's very." But men, no, they don't have that need, and they just need to do their jobs.
Right.
We don't want to deal with them on that level.
Right.
Too much trouble, too much energy, or something. But that's a problem. I watched a group of men and women kind of talk about problems in communication between men and women. And it was interesting. This lady got up and she said, well, what I want in a man is, he does this and he does that. And, when I'm fixing my hair at night, he'll come hold the rollers and he'll do this. And a guy got up afterward and he said, you don't really want a man. You want a servant and a dog.
You want a lady in waiting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I thought that was,
That's
uh,
profound.
yeah, close to being profound.
Yeah.
That's what this lady wanted.
Right.
She wanted somebody to provide services for her, do things for her, take her places, treat her nicely, do all that. And she wanted somebody to cuddle with and to be, serve her emotionally.
Yeah.
And he said, you want a servant and a dog. And I thought, you hit it right on the head.
Yeah.
She wasn't talking about how she wanted, someone who was a beautiful person inside and who was,
Kind to others.
who was kind and had depth. And she never mentioned any of that stuff. It's just all the things that he could do. And she wanted somebody to cuddle with, that would kind of hold her hand. And I think that's kind of true. But see, that's cultural. That's not necessarily, a fundamental
That may
part
not
of,
be their authentic self either, right? Their authentic
yeah,
self would be more pure and more love. So that's
yeah,
probably a lot of that is programming or conditioning, because like a lot of men aren't aware of their needs. I think women are often taught you don't have needs. You have to do everything for everyone else. So a lot of women aren't really aware. If you tell them what are their needs, I want the garbage taken out, I want this done, I want that done. But if you could speak to their soul, they'd probably tell you, I want to feel love and belonging. I want to feel
mm-hmm,
safety. Not only you're going to protect me if a bad guy breaks in the house and you're going to pay the bills, but safety for her to feel emotionally vulnerable enough that the man can hold her instant, fast, on the spot emotions without him falling apart or
right.
or disengaging. So I think that women also need to work on our emotional skills and update some of our software or instincts
Exactly.
so that we can learn how to celebrate each other and create that mutual safety mentally, spiritually, physically, and emotionally.
Yeah. But you get right down to it, the things that you just listed that women really need down deep are exactly the same sort of things that men really need down
Absolutely.
deep. It's the same stuff.
Yes.
It's the same thing. You know, they want to be special.
Yes.
You know, that's the same thing. So do guys. They want to be special. So they do their jobs better and better and better, but that doesn't get it. All right, they're making $1 million a year, and they're this and they're that, but they still don't feel seen. They still don't feel special.
And I think there's probably maybe a spectrum of any sort of characteristic that could be helpful or unhelpful, or it can be high entropy or low entropy. For instance, I wrote down like feeling special. People who genuinely feel special and appreciated and adored and admired don't need to develop that subconscious coping mechanism of more specialness. I have to be more special than you. It's more like, I'm amazing and I'm special and I'm safe. So are you. So I think sometimes when we tell people at various levels of consciousness, don't be self-centered, or don't make it about other people, not about yourself. If they suppress some of those core needs, they're more likely to develop the high entropy version of that actual completely valid core need. Like if somebody's bucket is full, they're going to naturally pour it on everybody else, right? They're going to be like, here, I feel great, so I want you to feel great and you to feel great and you to feel great. And I think one of those ways to feel great is to be self-aware of, feeling worthy of, and skillfully verbally communicating to others what those needs are. Not the taking out the garbage, but feeling safe and feeling adored and admired and appreciated. And when people genuinely don't feel those things and receive those things, they don't need that. I have to be the best looking and I have to be the best of this and I have to be more special than you. Like the ego likes to be special. But I think if we're special in a healthy way, that just sort of dissolves in a way. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense. And those, that feeling special has to be something that comes from somebody else. That somebody else out there has to be aware that you're special. You can say, well, I know I'm special, but that doesn't do it. It has to be somebody else out there that feels that way about you. And that resonates with people. And if it's a child, it's your favorite niece or something, and they really think you're special Uncle George, well, that feels good. And you particularly like that little girl, but if it's your spouse, that's even better.
Yeah.
If you get that sense that there's an adult and they really think that, right down to the deep depths of who you are, that there's a wonderful person in there, then that makes you feel kind of fulfilled.
Yes.
Like you're right. You're doing it. You've succeeded. It gives you all those feelings that you cannot give yourself. It has to be from the outside.
Yes.
Otherwise, you get this empty feeling.
Yeah. And I think we're often told everything you need is within you. And I think sometimes I don't think that's untrue, but I think sometimes people have described to me, I know I shouldn't need validation from other people. And I'm like, well, we are an interdependent species. So there's nothing wrong with getting healthy validation. Again, validation can be unhelpful from ego, or it can be very healthy. And somebody who feels adored and admired and cherished and appreciated is just naturally going to be lower entropy to others, but it's okay to have those needs from other people.
Yes, it's good. Yeah. It's nice when it happens. And most of us just keep on chugging if it doesn't. And we carry that little lonely spot in there and we learn to get by.
Yeah.
And, that's all right too. I guess that's not a terrible thing, but it's nice.
Not as much fun.
Yeah, it's not as much fun.
It's no wrong way to play the game. And I think something else is that important is that people maybe think about loving and accepting our partner's entropic patterns as well. So to feel totally loved and contained, it requires that hey, you're going to have stuff to work on, I'm going to have stuff to work on, we're both going to have some entropy and ego, but let's use this connection as a catalyst for expansion rather than making it I have to be a perfect wife and I have to hide all my all my messy bits, but to have somebody actually love you and appreciate you for all of the things that you've evolved and the things that you're currently on a mission to continue to evolve, I think and a lot of men feel like they have to be perfect and they're not allowed to, they're afraid of being selfish or they're afraid of being angry or they're afraid of, whatever their fears are so that they don't feel like they can show up with their whole selves. And I think that creates sort of more entropy or more fearful patterns.
Yeah. Well, it can be a very confusing mix of things. A person can feel that he needs to change or he doesn't want to be this way. He doesn't want to be self-centered.
Yeah.
But a lot of that is the intellect trying to find the proper, I don't know, what can I say? The proper way that it should act. There's a big difference between acting and being. You can act kind and you can be kind, two different things entirely. And a lot of people have their intellect looking for ways that they should act. I should not act self-centered. I shouldn't do this. I shouldn't do that. And they think of themselves and the things they've said, the interactions they've had with people, and they go back over that and they analyze that and they say, well, I'm coming off maybe a little too strong, or I should do this, or I should do that. But a lot of that is them tuning their image. They've got an image and they're tuning their image up to be more successful, more connections. People will like them better. They'll get more done. And it's sometimes hard to differentiate between tuning up your image and tuning up yourself, working on your being level, then you're saying, well, I shouldn't be so self-centered at the being level. That's a whole different thing than on the acting level. And it's really difficult when you interact with people to really know, they will say things, but are they talking about acting or are they talking about being? And when they go to do their exercises and try to do things with that, are they acting or are they being? Because most people start with acting.
Yeah.
And then slowly, if they're lucky, they'll ease their way into being. But at the being level is not so easy to change. You really have to be it. And if it's coming up here out of your intellect, then it's probably about your acting. Yeah. It needs to come from a deeper place than your intellect. It has to be down in the feeling space, not in the intellectual space. Yeah. But the only way you can talk to people is intellect to intellect. You see, but the intellectual space isn't where the real work gets done. The real work gets done down in the feeling space. So it makes it a little problematical to really connect with people and get them moving at the being level toward the right answer. Now it's 2:27 and I'm going to go at 2:30. So that gives us just a few minutes for winding up. I'm sorry I have to cut it short, but I just really crammed this week with time.
Yeah, no, that's okay. Would you like to do another?
Yes, and another. I think
great.
I think this is
fun.
Yeah, I think it's very good. Hardly ever does anybody talk about men's anything.
Yeah.
It's that if you're doing this job, and I think it's people might think it's odd that, well, why is it that you have a female who's this counselor for men? What does the female know about being a man and how a man should be, and so on? But, I think it almost has to be that way because men are not so likely to open up to other men. But to a female who's very understanding and not pushing at them, they can open up more readily, I think, than they would to other men. So I see that, being female maybe makes you more successful in this role. And because also their problems in relationship are all problems with females,
Yes.
pretty much. And you being a female then they can say things and you can react, from the female viewpoint, which then probably is very helpful to them to see the female viewpoint. So yeah, you being the men's advocate, I think just works perfectly. It's a really great idea. There should be another dozen of you or 1,000 of you out there doing this. I think it would be very, very helpful. So I'm
Part
happy
of my
to be a
mission
part.
with
Yeah,
my movement is to train other people to go out there and just support men, and also be willing to say to them, hey, I was manipulative. I was really passive aggressive with my partner. I pouted. I did this. I did that. Here's why I was doing it. It was obnoxious. But here was the core, reason I was doing it. Here was the unmet need. Go home and try this with your wife, and I bet you that behavior will disappear. Or,
Yes.
And it has to be people like me that are willing to self-reflect and be like, I used to tell men, be sensitive, and then they'd be sensitive at the wrong time, and I'd be like, why are you falling apart? You can't fall apart. You're the strong one. I kind of put them on like an emotional roller coaster. All the rules change every minute based on how I feel, but I'm not going to tell you the new rules, but you could fail. It was ridiculous.
Yeah.
So,
well, that's really good. That makes you a very valuable teacher for men. So yes, I'm happy to be a part of your thing, Sandy. I think it's important. It's a role and a thing that's hardly ever done. It's there's lots of women's groups and talks about women and women this and women that. I mean, there's thousands of those going on, but men don't really have much of that help.